We're recording, Carolyn.
Okay, I think if Kim can work on bringing up her screen, I'll start the introduction. We're very happy to have Kim Winkle as our speaker. Kim is a professor and director of the School of Art, Craft and Design at Tennessee Technological University. Her workshop teaching experience includes Haystack Mountain School of Crafts, Penland School of Crafts, Airmont School of Crafts and Arts and Crafts, Anderson Ranch Art Center, and the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship, John C. Campbell Folk School, and the Appalachian Center for Craft. Today, Kim will provide a gallery talk. Kim selected several pieces of artwork from her online show to highlight the artist's mastery of subject and/or medium. Thank you, and here's Kim.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know if before we get started, I see Judy has her hand up, and I didn't know if we needed to answer her question before we get moving.
Judy, is there a question, or was that just maybe accident?
Okay.
All right.
We'll get moving. First of all, I just want to thank Perry. Perry is the one who I've been communicating with, and she's just been super friendly and very helpful. And I always appreciate working with a nicely organized group, and y'all seem to be very organized. And it's just been a privilege to be able to be here and to look at your work. And it's super exciting to see the range of works and just the skill that's present. I also really appreciate seeing the different mediums that are being used by your group. So congratulations to you all, and thanks for giving me this opportunity to spend this morning with you and to spend my time with your artwork. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So I am going to be mentioning or discussing very briefly a wide number and a large number of work. So I'm not going to be able to spend much time on each individual work because of the interest of time. We're going to have to get moving and speak relatively quickly. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and dive right in. So this first piece, I believe it's fused glass, is a really nice use of color. I really appreciate the combinations of the blue and the black. And I also appreciate the use of negative space. I like those little voids in between the blue and black here. One thing I might recommend moving forward is to consider this space right here so that we don't see the actual clock mechanism. I think it would be nice to have that disguised, and maybe one of the factors that that was being considered was just the length of the stem that connects this back piece to the hands right here. But that's one thing I find just a little distracting, is seeing the mechanism itself. This piece, I really love the texture, the visual texture that's there. I guess there was maybe some frisket or some sort of blotting to create these sort of round, they kind of remind me of the little dandelion blossoms, the little furry bits. And I just love the texture and how it has revealed the white paper bit from behind and beneath. Also, just a really interesting variety of mark making and watercolor techniques, some wet on wet and then some dry, wet on dry. So it's really wonderful. I also like the composition, has a nice visual rhythm where we have these little punctuations that kind of repeat throughout the composition. One of the things I like most about this painting is the exaggerated composition, just how large the sky is. I love that contrast between this really low horizon line and this big majestic skyline. I think that the colors are really nice. I like the contrast of the rich green at the bottom and these more soft, kind of quiet tones at the top. I also appreciate how they've used warm tones in the sky. When we think of, the sky is normally blue, but we love to see how it changes at different times of the day. And this artist has done a really great job of capturing that soft, peachy light that I typically see more towards the evening hours. So beautiful composition. This is a really lovely, looks like a pencil drawing, pastel and maybe watercolors. Let's see, it says watercolor. I like the combination of these little sharp details and then more soft diffused areas. So for example, the details of like these little connections right here, that's a really difficult thing to do, especially in watercolors, to get that amount of sharp detail. And then I love like back here where we have these layers of different shades of blues and greens. And then back here, how those are just barely there, but we clearly understand what they are because they're put into context with everything else. And he's taken great, they have taken great attention to put in like all of the details of this space, like this anvil right here, the braid on this cord. It's just a really well detailed composition. One thing I do notice is the perspective is just a little off. So if, you know, linear perspective, this line and this line should be aiming in the same direction and will connect somewhere way back here in space. So the perspective is off just a little bit, which can be a little bit distracting. This owl is really wonderful. I love how close we are to the owl, how up close, like we're just right there sharing space with him. And then the mark making, I love the mark making, like these bold, aggressive marks right here are just terrific. And I love how these horns just fade off. And then of course, those intense orange red eyes just draw us in. Eyes being natural focal points is sort of exaggerated and amplified through this use of color. Also the reflection, like how they were able to capture the reflection of this eye to show us this wet, slick surface is really great. And another thing I want to point out that I think we should notice is just the way that the artist has used these pops of orange at different places throughout the composition to really create some visual unity, and it moves our eye throughout the composition. This is a really lovely rendering of this old log cabin. The image looks just a little bit grainy. So one thing I think we as artists need to be very, very attentive to is documenting our work with the highest resolution and the highest quality possible, because much of our success as an artist is based on the quality of the photographs of our work, because outside of the work alone, the photograph is the next important thing. So it looks like this is a little bit low resolution. So I would encourage our artists to try in the future to document their work with a higher resolution so that we don't have the graininess. But compositionally, I like how it's kind of mysterious and intriguing because of the way that the log cabin has these dark windows or dark openings where a window might be. Also, the porch line is kind of dark. And then the canopy of the trees that sort of frame it. I really like how the canopy of the trees frame the log cabin. And I really like the variations of green that's here. And the artist has done a really great job of showing us those branches by coming in and filling in black elements. But notice how the branches are, it would be easy for us to want to connect one line all the way over, but they've broken that line, creating an implied line by showing us these leaves over the top. And so mentally we fill in that space and understand how the space works. But I think they've done a great job of resisting the urge to want to draw a fully connected line. I also like the variation of marks, the layering of the transparent color, and these little punctuations of more saturated colors in areas such as this, that little bit of sort of aqua right there, and then again over here. This is a really dramatic black and white photo. I love the viewpoint. It looks as though the artist was lying on the ground or sitting on the ground, that the camera is very low. And so we can see the texture of the gravel or the sort of dried earth, and just this central focus that goes to that tree not only because the tree's in the middle, but they've paid close attention to these compositional lines that come in and direct our attention to that tree. Not only, are we brought there because of the central focus and contrast, but just these angular lines where the road meets the shrub or the grass, and then these wires and lines that connect the fence posts. Just a really dramatic composition. This is a terrific waterfall painting. I love the colors of the rocks. The artist has done a really great job of showing us the texture and the cragginess and the seams where the rocks meet. But another thing I really enjoy about it is the colors, the wide range of colors. But notice the saturation is pretty consistent across the board. So that helps unify. It can be busy when we have a very wide open palette, but because the saturation is pretty consistent, it is visually united. And I just really love this area up here. They've done a nice job of describing the space by showing the distance further away is much more diffused and soft, and more sharp focus here in the foreground. This is a really interesting weaving. I love the variation of textures. That was my favorite part of this particular artwork, is the variation of textures, and also the weave, like I guess the thickness of the yarn that creates this sort of fat areas and kind of bubbles on the surface, like this little bubble area here is really interesting, contrasted by the tighter weave here. I also like how the artist has used little punctuations of this intense saturated color. So we've got little punctuations like here, here, and here. And placing them at those spots like that helps unite the composition and move us through the composition. And this sort of dramatic, fluffy, furry bit is a nice sort of focal point. This is a really striking portrait. I like how the artist has chosen to utilize a solid black background that really brings the attention to the figure. Portraiture is very challenging, and additionally challenging by utilizing watercolor. Personally, I find watercolor very tricky and a difficult material to master. And the artist has done a really great job of describing the texture of the beard along with the portrait and the unique features of this man. And the use of color is great. Like, who would think to use blue down in this beard, but it works really, really well. And then notice the details, like that little bit of pink right here in the tear duct area. Like, just really nice details. Really well done. Proportions are accurate. Nicely done. This is a fun little guy, this cat, stained glass. I love, again, like I said at the beginning, I love seeing the different materials that your group is using. That's really terrific to see. I love the color palette on this, these kind of mauve-y, unsaturated, quiet purples, violets, and then contrasting it with its complementary color, yellow. I like the use of patterning. So we've got these nice large areas, like these could be the cheeks, contrasted with these more intricate patterns down through here. I also like how the artist has kind of described this sort of back portion or belly. I can't tell if he's looking at us or looking away from us. I think he's looking away from us. And I see like this as being like his spine area, the darker areas. And I like how the artist has isolated that area for the darker, more intense purples. And these little whiskers, the little twisted cord or twisted wire for the whiskers is really cute. This is a really accomplished watercolor. I think I might have seen this at Oak Ridge, in the Oak Ridge art competition there. And it's a beautiful watercolor. I mean, the artist is clearly very accomplished with this material. they've done a great job not only utilizing the material, but showing this complicated space. So we're looking at this store window, but we're also looking at this reflected space in the store window. And it's a really complicated space. So I'm looking like I'm standing a little in front of this man, but then if we look a little further over, we see like the street across the street. And then we even see more reflection here with these trees in the distance. And it's complicated to draw it. And then it's complicated to understand how to really employ and maximize the transparency of watercolor. I think the limited color palette works really well. We see the whole entire composition as tints and shades of blues and reds with little punctuations of yellow. So they're using this primary color scheme to describe this complicated and layered space. I really, what I liked about this painting is how well the artist did in describing the cut crystal of that bowl. And what's wonderful, I love how our brains just attach information to a painting. So we all probably clearly see this as a clear leaded crystal bowl that's cut with these facets, yet the bowl that's presented in front of us is this wide range spectrum of colors. So the artist has done such a great job of resisting the urge to attach our concept to the image, and instead has been able to capture their percept, what they're seeing. And so the way we see through those facets is through color. The color is reflected and it's broken, and they've done such a great job of describing that texture and that material. I love this painting, and what I love about it is I love these intense little bursts of color. Like, it's so unexpected. Like, probably most people would never think to add this little blue here at the top. I wouldn't have thought to do it, but it's so nice because it draws us in. And when we have repetition throughout a composition, it moves our eye through the image. So I love these super intense blues and this really intense magenta that's here. It's just a wonderful placement of color and use of color. Compositionally, it's quite nice. We have these nice diagonal lines that breaks the edge right here, so that draws us in. And then we're sort of like stepping stones. We have stepping stones of the peaches, we have stepping stones of the green leaves, we have the stepping stones of this intense blue that moves us throughout the whole entire composition. So we're just kind of going on this trip, this little journey around this composition. I also really appreciate seeing the texture of the canvas in this empty area. And it's really important to have this empty area in this composition as well. More is not always more. This looks like it could be on Yuzo paper. And I like this, how we're reading this flower into this, even though it's loosely described. It could be a flower. It could be just this turbulent sea of intense color. And I love that our imagination is encouraged to attach to it what we want to see. Where there are some other colors here, like the green, that helps contextualize it and put it into, our brains want to read it into being more of a flower when we see the green that comes with it. So I really like the busy energy from these swirls, and I love the intense color. This is felted wool. I was happy to see another medium, and I really appreciate, I presume this was needle felted, but I don't know that for a fact. I think that they've done a nice job of getting the detail in, to get something, that's maybe like the size of an egg, you have to start with a really larger piece of felt. And so to be able to work the material down to get this detail, like that reflection in the eye, that glossy wet nose right here in those whiskers, is not an easy feat. So I really appreciate their ability to manipulate this material in such a convincing way. I also really appreciate these little bursts of color down here. like they're little flowers and these little tendrils of leaf, like little grass blades poking up behind the fox. I really appreciated this use of color up here on the tips of the mountains. I like this sort of soft, really wet on wet, kind of gauzy sky, contrasted nicely with the much more distinct marks here in the foreground of these trees. And then the placement, they've done a nice job of showing us these sort of shallow space, up close space, so foreground, middle ground, background. And the way that they've used mark making and color saturation to help support that is really effective. I really appreciated this print. It looks like it's a photograph, canvas print. In that it reminds me of like going by, like if you've ever tried to photograph driving in a car and you're trying to catch something, but then it gets like soft and hazy because of the motion. That's what it reminds me of. So I really like seeing this loose texture right here. And then some lines, these nice sharper lines in here. I also appreciate that the composition, I prefer asymmetrical compositions personally. So I like this, how the composition is asymmetrical through the use of this intense green. We've got a lot more activity over here, but then we have soft little punctuations of green over here. I find this copyright label a little distracting. So unless you feel it's absolutely necessary to have it there, I prefer that it be gone. What I enjoyed most about this painting is the way the artist was able to capture the reflectivity in this teapot. This has a similar sort of issue with the image resolution as one that we looked at previously. Again, I just want to remind everybody the importance of a high quality photo, and a high quality photo includes high resolution. So I would encourage the artist from this point forward to utilize a higher resolution, either camera or your phone. If you have a newer phone, they tend to take really great photos. But the reflectivity on this is really nice. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you're familiar with the painting by John Singleton Copley of Paul Revere holding this teapot. Paul Revere was a silversmith. And it's a portrait of Paul Revere holding this teapot that he made, and we get to see this beautiful reflective surface. So it reminds me of that painting. This is another really great watercolor painting that is, I can't tell exactly what's going on. I can't tell if I'm inside looking through a window to the outside, or if I'm on the outside of a building, like this is the corner of a building and I'm looking through to the other side of the building, or if I'm looking through a window and that's a reflection in a mirror. And that confusion is very nice. It's really entertaining to me. They've done a great job of showing this glass up here, this cut glass. And the color palette is limited. We can see how we've got this nice blue-green, these sort of soft browns, and little punctuations of this unsaturated red. So really great use of color and also description of space. This was one of the few multi-paneled paintings. I think we have a diptych that appears somewhere. This, I believe, to my recollection, is our only triptych. And I appreciated the fact that we have a triptych. This one, again, needs to have a higher quality photo because the resolution is really grainy, because I imagine there's a lot of physical texture, actual texture in these brush marks. But unfortunately, I don't get to see that because the resolution is not very good. So please try to take a higher quality photo, but I do really like the use of color down here. We've got some purple that's poking through this sort of soft, gauzy yellow. And, I'm really curious to know what this space is. I can't tell if this is a field, if it is a fence, a wall, but I like that aspect. I like that my imagination gets to decide what it is. These are really wonderful watercolor paintings of these birds. I love the intense color. And this intense color is not something I see often with watercolor. So this artist chose to use a lot of paint compared to the water ratio. And I like that. I really love that intensity. And these birds, they have so much personality. And I love this pose. Like this little guy's just looking out at us, and I love that about him. And then the color of the seed that they're eating is a nice contrast in temperature. I love the sense of proximity. I like the fact that she cropped it instead of showing us the entire bird where we see his tail, their tails from a further distance. I like that we're right up here close to them, almost like we're a bird enjoying the seed with them. Well, this is a really interesting work, this mixed media work. I'm guessing we have maybe some maybe tissue paper, some paper, and looks like maybe some fabric. So I really enjoy all of the textures that are present. It's sort of collage-like in many ways, and I like that every now and then we have a little bit of text. And I like that the text is cropped and we don't have a whole entire word super present and dominant, because when we have words, words are symbols, we have to navigate and understand and decipher those symbols in order to get through life. So when we introduce text to a composition, it can overwhelm and dominate the composition. So we just have to be mindful and very purposeful in our decision making in terms of establishing our visual hierarchy. Understanding if we have text, that might then become the most important element in the composition. So you've got to learn to navigate that balance. So I think that they've done a nice job of showing us text throughout the composition that in the end creates a visual texture that works quite nicely. This was, I thought, a really interesting composition or technique. I remember this artist had a couple of scratchboard images, and I've never used scratchboard, and so I'm kind of intrigued by the material itself. But what I liked about this particular work compared to others of theirs is the intensity of the colors. And the intensity of the colors works perfectly with the subject matter. They've done a great job of showing the textures, the really delicate line work, and all of the little feathers that make up this hummingbird's body. And the intensity of the colors just works so nicely with the subject matter. And, we can just imagine that little bird and its wings just moving so fast. Like we can hear the little kind of buzz sound that it makes. So really well done. I mean, look at these little feet curled up there. Nicely done. I thought this was a really striking and intriguing photograph. I like how the dramatic shadows sort of encourage our imaginations to attach subject matter to it. Like I kind of start to think about kind of a creepy movie, or I wonder like what else is going on in this space. I like the diagonal composition, the just bold, striking, high contrast of those shadows. So I think it would be really interesting to see this artist take that idea even further. And I love the idea of photographing the shadows instead of the individual objects. This is a beautiful watercolor painting of garlic. The artist has done a really great job of showing us the texture, that sort of papery parchment quality of the peel, like the outside husk of the garlic, and the texture, like here where the roots were, how they dry up and kind of create these little threads. And I love the use of color, these peach and orange and yellow combined with this purple, and they've done a nice job of describing cast shadows. A cast shadow is darkest where it meets the object that casts the shadow. So we can see how they've been able to utilize that down here below. So it's just a really lovely composition. I also like how the garlic takes up a lot of the space, but so does the shadow. So they've placed the composition and the objects within the frame quite nicely. This is a beautiful watercolor painting. If I remember correctly, this artist had submitted three works, and why I selected this one because how well they describe the texture of these rocks. I've been fortunate to go to Maine a few times, coastal Maine, and it reminds me of coastal Maine, these sort of exaggerated um, rocky shorelines and these beautiful coniferous trees behind. They've done a nice job of showing the atmospheric perspective back here. So we have this intense green in the foreground, and then it fades and gets diffused as we move back into space. So just a beautiful composition. These lines, these little veins of lines, it can be easy to want to use a dark, like a black, to show these lines, and they've done a great job of using just tints and shades of the same color palette to show those striations. So very nicely done. I thought this was a really beautiful painting. Kind of takes me to Europe and this sort of Tudor architecture. And they've done an amazing job of showing the reflection in the water. I mean, look at this, that reflection down in this water, that's difficult to do. And it just looks quiet. It looks romantic. It makes me want to eat a crusty baguette. And I just love how well they've described the space architecturally. They understand perspective very well. I also love these little punctuations of color, the texture here in the trees. It's just very skillfully executed. This is a beautiful painting. Now, one thing I would recommend that this artist do is try to crop out that frame. When you're presenting your artwork for a jury or something like that, you don't want to have a frame like that present. You just want all the attention to be on the painting itself. But the painting is very nice. You've done a really great job of showing us those pearls. I teach a drawing class every fall semester, and I always present pearls to the students to draw. And the tendency is to want to outline all of them instead of think of them as individual spheres. And you've done a great job of showing us the individual spheres. We can see the sort of pearlescent quality, the luminosity, the glow, the reflection on the glass surface or the highly polished surface is quite nice. And then also you've done a great job of showing us the different facets and the reflectivity and the dimensionality of that glass perfume bottle. I thought this was a really sweet watercolor painting. I know this artist had other images, but what I liked about it was the narrative quality of this painting. I like that we can't see the child's face. I like how the child is just so engrossed in that activity of discovering this world in this stump of this tree. And then they're discovering the world, but then the artist has also done a great job of depicting this world. So we have this whole like ecosystem that's growing on the stump of this tree. And then, like these little lichen and moss and this little bit right here. And then I love just what I imagine the relationship between this little goat and then that child is just really sweet. And I love this kitten. I'm a big sucker for animals. So I just, when I saw this little kitten, I just loved it. I think that the artist has done a great job with these colored pencils and those eyes just bring you in, and that sweet little pink nose and the texture, like these white little whiskers and these little strands right here in the ears, and the texture right here. Like they've just done a great job of showing us the texture. I also like how it gets soft and it just kind of fades off. And I love how this edge is not, it can be easy to want to outline it. And that's not how the cat would appear in life, right? We don't appear with an outline around us. It's just the color stops. And they did such a great job of describing that. And then like this little dark area in the nasal cavity, it's just a really beautiful drawing of this cat. This is a striking, very striking black and white photo. I really appreciate the composition. I like the asymmetry. The artist has done a great job of capturing this perfect moment where the bird is, is turned, his head is turned, and creates an interesting composition, and just this kind of circular visual motion that occurs with this shadow. And it's just beautiful, like the lights and the darks. I had a black and white photography class in undergraduate school, and I remember what we would look for are these really crisp whites and these really dark darks. And so we have this perfect range of values across this composition. I thought this was a fun and energetic use of color. This artist also showed it was like a cat, like a tiger or something, jaguar or something like that was another painting that they had painted. And what I liked about this one was the use of color all over the composition and this like exaggerated, bold, gestural stroke marks and like these spiky lines that come out and show the coarse texture of the bear's ears. So just this wonderful, energetic painting that I found very uplifting. Also, the spectrum of colors here in the eye is really nice. Well, this was the China painting on the glass. I wish that the artist had given us another viewpoint or had been able to maybe raise their viewpoint just a little bit higher so that I can see a little bit more of this China painting. But I can see that it was very skillfully done. We have nice ranges of colors and nice fades from lights to darks, nice use of white to show like sort of highlights on the petals. So very skillfully done. And I know they had a couple of China painted works in their portfolio. So well done. I just wish I could see a little bit more of that painting. This is a really skillfully executed colored pencil drawing. I just really appreciated how well they were able to describe the texture. We all know holly leaves are kind of waxy. They're sort of waxy and almost like plasticky. And so this artist has done a great job of showing us that texture. Also, the sheen and the roundness of those individual holly berries and the shadows, like this cast shadows. Like we know that this branch lifts up because of the separation between the branch and the shadow, as compared to further down in here where the shadow is more attached to the object. So they've done a really good job of describing the actuality of the space and the relationship of the cast shadow to the object. And these little thorny bits, well done. I thought this was really fun. Kind of reminded me of like jazz music, just this texture and sort of an improvisational composition, sort of like a quilt, but in painted form. This looks to me like it's on the Yupo paper again. And I like these little bits of where I don't know what that is, like a solvent or something that has dripped on and kind of diffused those areas. I like those little bits. That creates kind of like a secondary rhythm. So we've got kind of this is sort of like a, and then we have these bigger bursts and sounds with these larger shapes throughout the composition. And same here. This was one of the few multi-panel images that I saw from the group. This diptych I thought was really interesting in the use of color and also the repetition of shapes. So what dominated for me, what I saw first were these round circular shapes in the red. And so I'm looking just subconsciously where those repeat and move through the composition. So I've got these two that dominate this one, and then I'm carried up to this, and then I start to see all of these additional ones on the side that are of a similar color. And so the repetition of those become like visual stepping stones along with these lines that connect the composition. So those drips kind of help move my eye through. I think it was, although we have a wide range of colors in this composition, we don't have a wide range of tints and shades of the individual colors. So by reducing that, it helps create a little bit more visual unity in something that could very easily be overwhelming otherwise. This artist, I know they showed a couple of images, and I selected this one just because of the level and the quality of draftsmanship. Like this artist is a good drawer, is a very good drawer, and they've been able to show us this space very well and these really detailed architectural elements, like the banister railings on this little boat, and all of the intricate work on this bridge, and then all of the intricate work on the museum in the background. So they've done a really great job of drafting the image. And then they've also very skillfully added color and watercolor. I really like the reflection here on the water. We think water, we imagine water to all be blue, but we can see how the artist has done a great job of telling us this is water, but we can see clearly it's not blue at all. And I love that. I really like how they were faithful to appearances instead of to what they think it should look like.
Yes. Thank you.
This is a really beautiful photograph. It's just like soft and quiet, this like country road, and the use of the color, like these leaves here down at the bottom, and then how it's repeated here. Like the artist has done such a great job of not only creating this lovely canopy, but they've paid attention to the use of color, and they've, like, I'm not seeing much color here. If I look further in the distance, I can see a little bit there, but they've been able to understand their lens and exposure times so that the focus is here on this intense color, and then we move back through the space. So really soft and romantic and quiet. And I really love this Rottweiler painting. Okay, it's not easy to draw this snout. It can be really hard. Like we can think that snout, it comes out further. We might want to extend it out further. Just mentally, we know that snout comes out a little bit. And so we can want to just attach that information to it. And I think that the artist has done a nice job of placing that snout where it's supposed to be. And they've also done a nice job with like the reflectivity and the black fur to show us the roundness of this dog's belly. And just the pose, it's just really not easy, especially with a black dog, because it's, the Rottweilers have this really intense black fur. And so there's a lot of information that can be difficult to see with that black fur. And the artist has done a really nice job of showing us that pose. I also like this sort of dramatic use of color. And it's a little bit flat, almost like a collage, but I kind of like that about it. I thought this was a really interesting composition. It says it's a photograph on, I guess it's attached to metal. And what I like about it is we think of photography as like being another version of reality, right? Like just like a snapshot of reality, but this is so abstract. And so I liked the fact that they take this medium that just is a snapshot of reality, but they've transformed it into something different. This could be another Yupo painting. It could be colored pencils. It could be watercolors. It could be acrylics. And I really enjoyed that about it. And this just sort of dramatic composition with a lot of texture and a lot of color and intense color. This is a beautiful painting. This artist is clearly has spent a lot of time with oil painting, and we can see how clearly they understand color and how clearly they understand the material and texture and brush marks. And I just really appreciated seeing all of these individual brush marks, like this here on the shoreline. I understand these to be like rocks, but they're just kind of very loose wet brush marks. And we see a lot more of that here in the texture of the trees. And even here on the hills in the distance, they're so loosely described, but we understand exactly what they are. And so I always appreciate a painting where the paint isn't scrubbed to death. So it's just this celebration of the juiciness of and the material itself, really celebrating the material. So I really enjoyed that. Like, let me just point out this little bit of orange right there. That is so nice. Same for this one. This artist does a really great job of understanding the material. So we can see these nice vertical wispy bits here and this nice texture and, you know, heavier application of the paint and this sort of what looks like a dry brush technique to show us the texture of those leaves. I love the color palette. I love how we have this intense peachy orange that's, we see it here in the foreground and it's repeated back here, back here, back here, back here, and it just moves us through that composition. So just a really lovely composition, and I love that intense kind of lime green. And I thought this was really clever and imaginative. I do want to encourage this artist to take a higher resolution image because we can see how our edges are kind of getting a little grainy. So take a high quality, high resolution image. But I just thought it was just such a unique approach to making. Like, I haven't seen anything like this. And I think the illustration themselves are really charming. Like the way these arms are described with just this little line, and to put that little ladybug right there is so cute. And look at her beautiful little delicate face. Like, we don't see a whole nose, but we understand that to be a nose. And then, of course, the ingenious use of the flower to show us the tutu of this dancer. And then another flower up here to show us her hat or hair adornment. So just really charming and cute and ingenious. Oh yeah, this one was the rogue butter churn, which I thought was just a lot of fun. I love the use of the materials. I mean, this is like over the top and fun, and it's such a great conversation piece. So we've got our toucan at the top, and then we've got this wonderful use of color to show these different kind of architectural elements. And then we have these lizards that are crawling up. It's just really fun and imaginative, and just a wonderful celebration of like the spirit of making. I really enjoyed that aspect of the piece. This is a really interesting painting because we see so much texture of that canvas coming through. It's almost as though it's a pointillistic painting, you know, like George Seurat, Sunday at La Grande Jatte, that kind of technique. I appreciate the looseness of the marks. It's really interesting if you get close to your screen, it looks like one thing, but then you get further back away from it and it starts to take form into another thing, kind of like a TV screen, you know, old school TV screen where you know, as a kid, you'd sit close eating your cereal and then you got further away and it became something different. That's how it looks to me. I really love, like, they've described the species of these trees very nicely. And these greens and yellows in here, little punctuations of these orange that pokes through here and there. Really well done. This is a beautiful watercolor. Clearly, this artist has spent a lot of time doing watercolor and understands the material. This is an incredibly intricate and detailed watercolor, like to show wicker, and to show wicker so well. So we not only have the detail and the complexity of showing the texture of the wicker, they've also selected like ornate fabrics and cushions and these flowers, these, like, you know, bulbous fluffy flowers. They've just done a really great job. And the cast shadows back here on this wall, it's just really well done. Just a really complicated thing. This glass of water right here with the lemon wedge in it, and we can see through the transparency of the water and the glass to see the strawberries on the tray behind it. It's just when you look closely, there's just so much complexity included in this composition. This is a really wonderful strand of braided garlic. I think that the artist has done a really nice job of showing us the texture of the garlic, this sort of papery skin on the outside, and then the stalks here at the top. Yeah, just a really wonderful, they've done a nice job of showing this twisted ribbon, like the way the ribbon folds over on itself is really nice. I appreciated this. This artist had a couple of stained glass images, and I selected this one because of the way that the sunflower is cropped and divided and moves us through the composition. This one I thought was most successful of the works that they presented because of that. It's as though this was one big composition that they broke into three, and our eyes move through this very easily because of that connection that we make visually from one panel to the other. I like the use of these nice shards, but then the punctuation of these little glass beads throughout the composition, and also the color palette. The artist did a nice job of creating this cool color palette at the top that's contrasted with the warm color palette at the bottom. I thought these were really interesting works. So they were, they're compositions within a composition of sorts. And there's so much detail included in these. We can see they've provided the ruler to give us a sense of scale, and we can see how much detail there is in these individual paintings, especially this one right here. So this one is only about 5 inches wide, but look at all of that detail. We've got all of this texture in the clouds. Look at the cast shadows that come across on behind these cacti. So, and they've been very careful to place that shadow in the right spot. If our sun is here, that's where the cast shadow is going to appear. They've done a nice job of showing us atmospheric perspective. Things get smaller, less clear. The color saturation is reduced as things move away from us in space. And then we have this mountain line in the distance of this nice purple. So really well done, especially on such a small scale. I thought this was a beautiful photograph of this cardinal. I love how the cardinal seems to be kind of looking at us, and I like how I feel like I'm kind of sharing space with this cardinal because of how close I am. I love how the photographer was able to understand and place focus on the cardinal and not on the snow right here on this element. So just really wonderful use of understanding focal length, focus. I don't know if this was edited post photo in like Lightroom or something like that, so that the focus is here, and then they created like a lens blur out to the edge. I don't know how they did that exactly. I imagine so, because we have sharpness here on the tail feathers as well, but really wonderful. I like how everything's so gray except for her. She's nice and bright. Her beak and her little headdress up here is just so nice. Like before, unless the photographer finds it absolutely necessary to include this, I would leave it out. I find it distracting. This is a really nice watercolor painting of these geese flying. The artist has done a really nice job of showing us their body, their silhouetted form, and I can imagine them honking overhead. When you hear geese flying over, they sound like they're honking, and I really like that. I like how they're silhouetted, but we also have variation within their form. So we've got this nice purple, that kind of bleeds out. The color palette's really nice. I just think it's a really lovely composition. I might like to see the composition longer instead of like this 4x6, 5x6 format. I would be interested in seeing it as more of an exaggerated horizontal composition. So I think on this particular composition, you could crop off the bottom inch and a half, to kind of create more of that panorama kind of feel. Oh, okay. So we're back to the beginning. So that does leave us a little bit of time, maybe 10 minutes for some question and answer. I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can see each other better. But I just think it's a wonderful, really wonderful display of works. I love the variation. I love how much spirit is present in the works. And, it looks to me, I don't exactly know how your group works, but maybe y'all have had some workshops because there seems to be themes in some of the work. But I just want to say, well done, bravo, congratulations to all of you for just a really wonderful display of work. Also, I think you should be commended for putting yourself out there. It can be a little intimidating and a little scary to put your work out there and, to hear somebody talk about it and be evaluated. And sometimes it takes building up some thick skin. And I just want to commend you for taking that risk and having the confidence in yourself and the work. So congratulations.
I want to say thank you so much, Kim, because I've learned a lot listening to your narrative of the pieces, and it's just so interesting to hear your comments.
Oh, thank you. I think my teaching and, going through the critique process in class and with students is really helpful in looking at work and talking about work. But thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Does anybody have any questions for Kim?
I felt like I just attended an art class. It was just very educational going through the process, not only for my own picture, the critique, but everyone's. It taught me what I need to look for in my art progression.
Good. I'm glad. It was fun. I really enjoyed it as well. Just looking, I don't know. I think, when we hear somebody talking about work, we see what we see, but it's nice to have somebody else tell us what they see. And so then we can see the work fresh and new. And then maybe we've learned something from looking at that new experience of looking at that work. We might see something new and fresh in another work. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
I've always enjoyed working in black and white, and I'm kind of new to color. Well, I finished an artist trading card yesterday, and I was working on leaves in the background and was not very happy with them, but the critique of the holly was very helpful to me. And now I would like to go back and redo my card and apply some of those things that you talked about. That was great.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy to see just the range of works. I just really love that, from the felted fox to the stained glass to the milk turned gone rogue to, the Rottweiler painting to the super intricate and descriptive watercolor paintings of the wicker, to the Yupo paper, more kind of abstracted, just a really wonderful range of works. And I just love that. Just a real celebration of art and making. So that it's just really terrific to see.
And hearing you speak about it gives us a vocabulary so that we're able to, describe other people's work more, in words that make sense about contrast or cast shadows and things like that, that we, self-taught people don't know very much about. So.
Right. Good.
Any other comments or questions at this point? No, well, again, we want to really thank you, Kim. This has been outstanding. And we're all learning, always learning, and it's an excellent way for us to get feedback. And just remember, everyone, this was recorded. You can go back in and listen again and keep using this as a learning tool. And as a follow-up, I want to encourage everyone to refer back to the program page on our website. And there's links to Kim's webpage where you can see more of her work and the exhibits where her work is on display. So we want to appreciate your art too, Kim.
Thank you.
Maybe even purchase some of it. So thank you so much.
This has been wonderful, Kim. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It was really fun.
And everyone, please feel free to provide your feedback about our meeting programs. We're always looking for improvement and different art mediums to share. And I think today really exhibited that opportunity. Our next meeting, September 16th. The meeting will be a face-to-face at the Tellico Yacht Club. Bill Capshaw, a well-known pottery artist from Oak Ridge, will be our speaker. Then on October 21st, Chico Austin will share his silver jewelry designs for a face-to-face meeting. Both artists will bring pieces for sale, and it's a good time to begin your holiday shopping. So thank you again, everyone, for your participation all year, and especially in our Zoom environment. I think the same 20-some people have remained with us, and it's been wonderful. And we really hope you have a great day and a safe and fun summer while we're on our break, and we'll be back in September. So thanks again, and have a good one.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank